Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi there. Welcome to Grief to Growth podcast. Your host is Brian Smith, spiritual seeker, best-selling author, grief survivor, and life coach. Brian believes that the worst tragedies of life provide the greatest opportunity for growth. Brian says he was planted, not buried, and he is here to help you grow where you've been planted by the difficulties in life. In each episode, Brian and his guests will share what has helped them to survive and thrive. It is his sincere hope this episode helps you today.
Hey, everybody. This is Brian back with another episode of Grief to Growth. And today I've got with me a fellow Shining Light parent. Her name is Judy Unger. I met Judy recently through an app that I use called Insight Timer, which if you listen to the program before, you've heard me talk about Insight Timer all the time. And I formed a circle in Insight Timer, and Judy joined the circle. Judy, I'm going to read her biography, and then I'll tell you why she's here. Judy has been a commercial illustrator since 1981. And her illustrations can be seen on many well-known food labels. For 30 years, she focused on her art career and her family. She gave up songwriting and playing guitar, which was something she had loved as a young girl. In 1992, Judy's 5-year-old son, Jason, died from a severe congenital heart defect. Judy wanted to be buried with them, and grief swallowed her life up for almost 2 decades. In 2010, at the age of 50, Judy was caring for her parents and coping with the challenges she faced with the 3 surviving children. During that time, she became exhausted, uninspired, and sad. It was truly a miracle that at the age of 50, she was able to experience a creative and emotional renaissance. Judy opened her heart to write the deeply painful experience of losing Jason, and her journey toward healing began. Sharing the story of his brief life transformed her, and the grief that she carried was lifted. Finding joy after 18 years of sorrow was a gift that Judy had never imagined. Music was a magic carpet that lifted her over all of her stress. She was very close to both her parents, and it was hard to watch them suffer. But her songs eased her pains, and she was especially grateful that both her parents witnessed her joy before they died. Judy's a passionate songwriter. Her songs comprise a musical of her life. Many of her songs are dedicated to her son, Jason. She rediscovered the songs composed in her youth and wrote new songs that helped her cope with her current challenges. And that's how I met Judy, because she's taken some of her songs and turned them into a course on Insight Timer. And that's what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today. Judy's blog, My Journeys, Insight, and Illustrating My Life have reached people all over the world. Her book, Beside Me Always, is available on Amazon and on Kindle. Judy also creates meditation music for Insight Timer, and we're going to talk about her free course, which is Healing Grief Through Music. Judy is here today to convey her optimism and her belief that if she could heal, perhaps others could find hope with her story. If her words and music bring any level of comfort to another person, then she believes she has achieved more in her lifetime than she's ever dreamed of. So with that, I want to welcome Judy Unger.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah, Judy, I am glad you're here. I am a believer in synchronicities. I think that people come across our lives that we're meant to meet. And as I mentioned in the intro, I use this app, Insight Timer. I literally use it every day. And they have a new feature on there where you can create circles. And I created a circle, and you came in and you told me about this course. And I looked at the overview of the course. I'm like, this looks fantastic. And there are 10 lessons. I will confess, I'm on lesson 9. I haven't finished the 10th lesson yet, but it's great. And it's healing grief through music, which I'm a big fan of music. So Tell me about, first, I want to give you a chance to talk about Jason. So tell me about Jason.
Well, I was just going to say about my course, I should have named it Healing Grief Through My Music, but I shortened it to make it just more palatable, because I really can't say healing grief through music to you, because I don't know how everybody is going to respond or heal. I know people in grief that have told me that they cannot listen to music. Mm-hmm. It stirs up the memories and it makes them ill. And I understand that too. I did not have music during my grief. Mm-hmm. It was a long time before the music came back to me. And I'm grateful to that every day. Jason, wow, what can I say about little Jason? He lived 5 years. And he taught me so much. But I have to be honest, when he died, I felt different than other bereaved parents. I had this horrible revelation that I wished he had never been born. Or I wished he had died as an infant, because he was very sick when he was born. He barely made it. And my rationale for that was, if he had died early, I wouldn't have suffered as much, because I grew to love him. I was his caregiver. He was fragile. It was my involvement and dedication that actually kept him alive. He almost died so many times. Mm-hmm. So having that burden and feeling that there was just only torture. And the fact, too, that I had remaining children. I had another son that was 2. And later on, he was diagnosed with autism. And I didn't know. I thought it was grief. He was screaming all the time. He wouldn't talk. So not only did I lose this very articulate old man who was 5 years old after heart surgery, I had another child that wouldn't stop screaming, that couldn't even say mommy until he was 5 years old. Mm. And I got pregnant right away. So I threw myself into my children. And that was my distraction and also my survival, my coping. But it wasn't even until I wrote about grief, which was 18 years after his death, that I learned that Jason's name meant healer. And I didn't name him knowing that. It was just really astonishing for me. He was very, what's the word? He was like a shining light. He sparkles. He was exuberant. I'm grateful that he didn't really suffer. He could have suffered. I think in some ways I tell parents that have lost children, worse than death is to see your child suffer. For me, I mean, that's my belief. So my whole goal was to keep him from suffering, to do everything during his short life that would make him comfortable. Mm-hmm. And when you're a caregiver, I mean, there is no good death, and I don't like to compare, because you'll often hear the worst death, suicide. Losing an older child is different than losing a young child. And I went through all that because I was very involved with a lot of other bereaved parents. Mm-hmm. But I learned comparisons, just what is the point? My grief is worse than your grief. It's all bad. There just really isn't a point to compare. So it took me a long time, but eventually I realized that I'm actually grateful that I had him. I don't believe that I wish he would have died. It was just very hard to be a parent to my surviving children. What kind of a parent could I be to my daughter who was born less than a year after his death? Mm-hmm. I was not going to sing to her. I wasn't smiling. I was crying all the time. Would the pregnancy have been affected by all the grief? Mm-hmm. So that's a lot to carry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to go back to something you said earlier before you started talking about Jason, the idea of healing through music. And I do have friends who's after their children have passed said it's too powerful. I can't listen to it. Right. I'm exactly the opposite. My daughter passed away in the summer, and I walk every day. And I was listening to music and seeking out music that would help me heal, to process the feelings that I was going through. So you're right. It's a little bit different for everybody. And for some people, it might take a while because your music was taken away from you for a while. And I know another parent that I work with who creates music and creates art, much like yourself. And when his son passed away, he couldn't even go near his instruments for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting for me is to backtrack on the journey. My music and songwriting was during a time before I had children, before I got married.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got married, I put it aside because I became career oriented. And I also think I wasn't connected to my heart. I began to suppress my feelings. I thought, I'm not really happy, but I've got to be a mature woman and accept that this is what married life is. And I just don't feel like singing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I had Jason, who was my first child, he loved music. So it revived my music for that time just for him. It wasn't about original songs. It was about whatever he wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his own little guitar. So after he died, the thought that I could ever sing again, it was like I did try for my other children because they deserved to hear a song or two, but my heart wasn't in it. And I never dreamed I'd sing again. But here's a little clue, a very tiny clue. It's actually a big clue. When I was 17, I wrote a song named Beside Me Always. And it was for a boyfriend, and it was just a feeling that he would still be with me in the future. I have other songs like that. And then Jason died, and I was absolutely in shock, and we had to hold a funeral. And I thought, I don't think I can get up and speak. So I actually recorded a eulogy, and I wanted some poetry. So I thought about that song, and I decided, you know what? The lyrics are very much about him, somebody being beside you. I'm changing the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So I revised those lyrics, and I read them at the funeral. Of course, not sing them. I couldn't imagine singing, but I read them.
Mm-hmm.
I also had another song called Saying Goodbye and another one called More Than You Know. So I had 3 songs that I read. And then I didn't have music in my life, and the rediscovery of music is an entire story in itself. But it was 18 years after Jason had died. I felt very proud that I had survived grief. Survived. And that was a huge achievement. I considered it my greatest achievement because it was one foot in front of the other. And I sometimes don't even think I had hope. I was crawling. I found that it helped me to connect with other bereaved parents. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like holding hands. I remember a grief coach said to me, you need to find someone going through it with you. I can't really hold your hand. I'm far ahead. Find someone also in the same, at the same time frame that you're going through it. Hmm. So I found some partners, and in grief, we learned how to walk again, and we shuffled forward, and I thought, I have survived this. And then it reached a place of suppression. You know, I didn't cry anymore. I didn't talk about Jason. I felt like if I talked about him in the beginning, I didn't want to be with people that talked about trivial things. It would make me really angry. Like, you know, I lost my child and you're talking about, you know, you're upset about something mundane. Mm-hmm. But then later on, it's like, if I was to mention that I had a child that died, then my friend would go, I'm so sorry. And then everything would focus. And then I felt like I wanted to support my friend and not make them uncomfortable. So I didn't bring it up. I didn't say, today is the anniversary of his death. I just kind of kept it to myself. But I had support from my parents and from a few good friends. And years went by. Yeah. And I was not really happy. I mean, I was just surviving. I had my other children who had issues. I did not have a good marriage, but my determination was grief was not going to destroy my marriage. So I stayed married no matter what. But the truth was, even before I had children, I was lonely. In fact, I think that's why I had children, to fill the void. So I had so much I wasn't acknowledging. Yeah. And how did I wake up? What changed? Well, what changed was the loss of my mother and my father. They were getting sick, and I took them in to live with me. Mm-hmm. And then my mother kept falling and getting sicker and sicker. And at one point, she was on a respirator for like 6 weeks. And I didn't think she was going to make it, but I started to, every night I'd come home from the hospital and I'd write to my family and my friends, and they were captivated by my writing. They said, you're a really good writer. But it was because I began to share the details. I would tell them, you know, the trach tube, I could see her blink her eyes and she's communicating, and I think she's going to, they were hanging on to my descriptions. Mm-hmm. And she actually slowly improved, and she was released from the hospital. It was a miracle.
Wow.
But after that, I thought, I want to keep writing. So I started my blog, My Journey's Insights, and I was kind of exhilarated by the idea, what am I going to write about? So I started out writing about what I've been through with my living children, how difficult it was to find out my, son that's surviving had autism and what I had to go through. And then, having my daughter born right after grief. And then I had my third son, and he also had trouble. So I was just writing all these stories, but I wasn't writing the hardest one.
Yeah.
That's the one. So one day I went in the closet and I took the box out that held all his memorabilia, and I sorted through it. It was 18 years after, but it came back as if it had just happened.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It's been 5.5 for me, and you can go right back there just like that.
Oh.
I do want to ask you a few questions. So it was 18 years before you really sat down to process your grief after Jason passed. And I want to say this, I want people to hear that because I think it's very important. I work with clients, and I was just telling you before we started, usually it's in the first 6 months to year that, they come to me. And I find they're like, I'm going to be this way forever. This is never going to change. And when you try to hold that hope out to someone that's that early, they just can't see it. But, it can take us a while to process it. We all process it a little bit differently. But the question I want to ask you, you were part of Compassionate Friends, is that right?
I was a leader, yes.
How long after Jason passed did you join Compassionate Friends?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode.
Well, that's interesting. Not everybody wants support groups, but for me, it was something desperate. It was like, if I can't be at a support group, I don't know what to do. So I looked all over. I actually went to a general support group, and that was where I found my partner in grief. My friend and I connected because in this group, there were people that had lost a pet, a parent, and we were just like scornful, like, oh my God, that's nothing compared to what we're going through. That was my mistake. At that time, I just was so angry, that stage, and her and I connected. But then I realized I need something closer. So then I went to a Compassionate Friends meeting. I went to different ones in the area. And here was the thing. I would listen, and if it was a baby or if it was an older kid, I wanted somebody that had lost a kid like Jason, because only they could understand what I went through. A kid that had a heart defect or health issues, because I was a caregiver, that was really hard, to lose that space in my life. What do I do with myself? And somebody that had lost a child that wasn't older, I had to clean out his bedroom. If you had an older child, you didn't have to deal with that. I wanted that total relating. And it was interesting because I did meet a mother who had a child with a similar heart defect. And it taught me something. Isn't it interesting? You learn from every person you meet. I beat myself up because my son died after surgery. And I kept thinking I had another doctor with a different opinion. And this surgeon, my cardiologist, recommended her, but she really wasn't a pediatric heart surgeon. Maybe he could have survived, and I had picked the wrong person or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then this woman, her story was her son needed heart surgery, and she checked him into the hospital, and he died the night before his surgery. He didn't even have surgery, and he died. So what did that tell me? That told me, it's capricious. I mean, Jason could have died before surgery. It is what it is, which is an awful thing to say, but I learned from that. And then in the end, it turned out that there wasn't going to be anybody that lost Jason, only I. That is the lonely part. That is the part that's so horrible about grief. There's no one that's going through what you're going through. It's your personal love and devotion and the horrible loss.
Yeah. Well, it's both unique and universal at the same time. We all go through grief. We all go through it one way or the other. Whether you lost a pet or you lost a child, it's grief, but there is something very unique about it as well. But a lot of things you said were very common, anger, guilt, what did I do? Could I have done something different? I think every parent goes through that, no matter how their child passes. We think we're superhuman, right? We should have done something different.
How did I not save my child? That is the ultimate failure if we can't save our child.
Yeah. And the other thing I've seen that also with parents, and I guess I just didn't really have it, but I've seen it's very common is I want to talk to somebody whose child died just the way mine did.
That's it.
My child was murdered. I need to talk to someone whose child was murdered because they're the only ones that could understand. And I think that's something that we go through and kind of move through that phase before we realize that losing a child is losing a child.
It's so different now. I can't believe the person I was versus the person I am. I mean, helping people that have lost older children, they're just like, I don't have time to heal. I mean, I'll be dead in 10 years. It's like, I just want to die now and be with my child. Sure. Or the sadness of even a stillbirth or miscarriage. They don't have any memories. They didn't get that chance.
Right.
That's a huge loss. So my compassion has grown.
So what were your thoughts about Jason's state, I guess, after he, and I know she used the word died, and I'm part of a group called Helping Parents Heal, and we're very careful with our language. So I don't often use the word died. So that's why I stumble over it, because I don't believe our children die. But so what were your thoughts about Jason after he died? What did you think about where he was? Was he with you, or did you think about it at all?
Well, it was so awful that I wrote about it. And actually, I could read an excerpt that I wrote for my audiobook, because once I did write his story and I began healing, I decided that I really wanted to share it. I recorded an audiobook with his story and about my songs early on, like 2 years after that. Oh. But it took me another 3 years or 4 years till it got out there. And actually, when it got out there, I hired somebody to read the book because I just didn't think I could sell it, that I didn't have a professional speaking voice. But I realized that people appreciate the heartfelt nature of it. And actually on Insight Timer, having the live sessions have been wonderful because I decided to read the story again. It really takes me back. So let me pull it out real quick, and if that's okay, I'll just read a little segment. The name of my book is "Beside Me Always," which is the song that truly told my story. So here we are. And the lyrics to "Beside Me Always," that song, is so telling because even though I wrote the song back at the age of 17, I still did this thing in the chorus, where the chorus that's initial is, and when my tears are flowing and I'm not sure where I'm going, I feel your love and you're beside me always. In the breeze that's blowing, you surround me in a breeze that's blowing. But at the very end, I switch it. And I say, you would tell me when your tears are flowing and you're not sure where you're going, just feel my love, and I'm beside you always. In the breeze that's blowing, I'll surround you in a breeze that's blowing. So the whole concept was I'm looking, I'm wondering, and I'm feeling the breeze. That's giving me chills. It's like, I know he's there. And now I hear his voice and he's telling me, yeah, I'm there. I'm surrounding you. So when he died, first of all, I had never seen a dead person in my life. I was innocent. There's this whole stage of grief before and after. You're not the same person and you never will be. And there's the never and the absolute, the always, the never. But I choose to look at that as I've transformed. It's changed my life. And I actually look at it now as a blessing. I didn't used to.
Right.
In fact, a bereaved mother told me the word blessing upsets her. It's like, why are other people blessed and I lost my child, so I'm cursed?
Right.
So I'm not saying like I'm better than anybody, but I do say to myself that there's something positive came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It actually, I thought my songs were dead. I want to say dead, gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
But because of Jason, I injected all of my love to him into the music, which healed me, which helps others. And he's come back. He's
Absolutely.
living in a different way.
Absolutely.
He's living through my music. So here is, I'll just read this segment because it is so emotional.
At this point, Judy reads a passage from her book, Beside Me Always. And I've decided to take that passage and move it to the end of the interview. Some of the descriptions in it are pretty graphic, and I'm afraid could be triggers for people who are newly into grief, or some of us who may have discovered our child's body after they passed. So what I wanted to do was to move that to the end. I think it's very important. It's very uplifting, I think, for people that are ready for that. It does end on a note of hope. But I decided to move it to the end because I didn't want to possibly trigger anybody. So stay to the very end if you want to hear the passage, and I will add it in there. Meanwhile, I'm just going to continue with the conversation right after the break.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it.
We'll get back to Grief to Growth in just a few seconds. Did you know that Brian is an author and a life coach? If you're grieving or know someone who is grieving, his book, Grief to Growth, is a best-selling, easy-to-read book that might help you or someone you know. People work with Brian as a life coach to break through barriers and live their best lives. You can find out more about Brian and what he offers at www.grieftogrowth.com, www.grief2growth.com, or text growth, GROWTH, to 31996. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/grieftogrowth, www.patreon.com/GRIEF2GROWTH to make a financial contribution. And now back to Grief to Growth.
Yeah. Thanks, Judy, for reading that. That's, you captured really well there. I can relate to pretty much everything you said. I think you captured it really well. And what I want to point out to people when they hear that, I don't want anybody to think, well, I've got to wait 7 years before things are going to get better. Or, everybody's grief journey is unique, and it depends on who we are, the relationship we have with our child. It depends on what we do, so we all process things differently is what I want to say to people. So I don't want anyone to get discouraged when they hear that it might be, a very, very long time. So when did you write that? You said that was pretty soon after Jason had passed, right?
No,
No, that was later. Yeah.
Yeah, the story that I wrote was 18 years after his death. When I was reading to you, it all came back.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because after I wrote the story, I felt differently. It was as if I was carrying all those details in here, and it was taking up space. And by writing it down, suddenly I could let it go.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to ask you this. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But it sounds like for a long time you kind of suppressed your grief. You didn't really express it, and then when your parent, and this is very common too, because it happened to me when my grandmother passed away. It was about 3 years later before another very emotional event triggered me to actually start processing it. So it sounds like your parents, what you're going through with your parents, kind of triggered you to process what you had gone through with Jason. Is that right?
I'm not sure how to describe it. I think I felt like I cried enough tears, like there weren't any tears left. It was like I was done crying and I was emptied out and I was tired. And that it suddenly occurred to me that I could survive. Survival just meant I always would grieve. I was always sad about his loss, but it wasn't the forefront of my life. I wasn't crying all the time. And I was grateful for that, because after so many years of sitting in my car and crying before I could get out and see my friends and pretend everything was fine. And I don't think I was pushing it down. I actually reached a place I called zombie land. I had no feelings. And I think that's a place where we don't want to feel pain. So we choose not to feel anything.
Right.
No pain, no joy, flat line. And my parents had been a big support. So you are absolutely right. That was the trigger. That, oh my God, my mother used to, remember Jason with me. And now I'm losing her and I don't feel this connection to my husband because we never shared our grief. And that was an issue for us, which is so common too. But I felt so alone in the world. Yeah. And then it's like that space opened up after writing the story and I became open. And what happened was a good friend had said to me, do you ever play your guitar anymore? And are you kidding? It's in my closet for 30 years, And one day I just went in my closet and pulled it out. I was alone. And what song did I play? Beside Me Always. I thought, can I remember this song? And I started to play it. And it was like something came into me, like a spiritual moment, like I felt him. And then I went back and I played it the next day. It hurt. My fingers were really hurting. Yeah. And that was the beginning. That was it. That's what happens.
I think my thing is, I think grief has to be processed. I think it demands to be processed, and we can try to bypass it. We can try to stuff it down, and it'll sit there and it'll wait. But but at some point it's going to come back until we invite it in. And go through it, and that's why, there's no way.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's no way around it. We have to go through it.
I remember as a leader, a person came into the support group. She had just gone off antidepressants after 5 years. It was like it was her first day telling her story.
Yeah, the thing, antidepressants are interesting. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't give medical advice, and some people need to be on medication. So I always preface it with that. But I've been on antidepressants, and it's the way you described as zombie land. And I realized I didn't care about anything. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. I was just like flatline. So sometimes we need that in the early stages of grief. We're in the shock and it's overwhelming. We need to just zombie out. But at some point, we've got to look it in the eye and face it and go through it. And I think with you, if I remember correctly, as I was listening through the lessons, at one point you said you started doing hypnotherapy. I think that was 18 years after Jason had passed away.
Yeah, it was interesting because I did not feel that I could benefit from any kind of counseling. I tried going to a counselor, and she was someone who had lost a child, but she seemed to be like a cheerleader. And she's like, something good will come out of it. And I was like, are you kidding me? I don't want to hear that right now. Right. And I was done with her. And then, of course, I tried a few other therapists. And if they hadn't lost a child, what the hell do they know? Right. Mm-hmm. It turned out my best therapy was other parents. They know. And that was my savior. Anybody that had lost a child, not, hugely close, but I could see them. And those were the only people I wanted to be with. And it was a shock to me when the leader of the Compassionate Friends group I was going to, she had lost 2 children, which I can't even begin to believe, asked me if I could take over. I was not even 1 year into my grief, and I'm taking over a grief group. But all I did was sit there and let everybody tell their story. That's what we do. Yeah, and I don't want to get into comparing groups, but I'm part of Helping Parents Heal, as I said earlier, and I have never been part of Compassionate Friends, so I'll preface it with that. But we strongly believe in talking about the continuity of life and our children still being with us and celebrating our children. And I know for me, that's made all the difference in the world. Just seeing my daughter is over my shoulder because I literally believe that she's with me all the time, and she's inspired me to do what I do. And I was fortunate that I found this group, only a few months after Shana had passed away. And I think that helped me to process the grief and being around bereaved parents. I mean, like you said, we went
we had a conference. It's been 3 years ago now. And we were out in Scottsdale, Arizona, and all us parents were together. And it was funny because we were just having a great time. We're laughing, and during happy hour in the hotel, people walk through and it's like, who's that group? It's like, well, those are the bereaved parents. But it was just being around people that understood us, where we could be ourselves, or we could cry together, we could laugh together, and we could process, like, what does this mean? What do I do with this? So when someone tells you that hasn't had a child pass, oh, something good's going to come out of this, you want to smack them in the face. you don't want to hear that. Yes. But when another parent tells you that's 10 years in, then you say, well, okay, maybe that can happen.
Yeah. It makes me think about my song that I guess, I don't focus as much on the transition and the afterlife because I'm trying to just live in the present to get through the life that I have. Because I do know a lot of bereaved parents where they're just looking forward to dying to be with their child.
Yes.
But my song, Angel in the Sky, right away reminded me of your daughter because Shana means beautiful. And my mother used to call me Shana Punam, meaning beautiful face. And the lyrics in that song are, I dream about your sweet embrace, your sparkling eyes, your beautiful face. And you are my angel in the sky, like a butterfly. You flew away and couldn't stay. We had to say goodbye. I still cry, so you must know I miss you so, my angel in the sky. And the second verse is, and when I die, you'll take my hand, my lovely light, just not in sight. So I definitely believe that when I die, he'll be right there to help me and be there to see him again.
Yeah, and you made a really important point. We don't want to live just to die. And that's a phase that I've went through, and I, frankly, sometimes I'm still there, where I look forward to seeing my daughter. We have to live this life. We have things to do while we're here, and I know. So there has to be a balance, But we can also get so caught up in this world. And you talk about this, and I forgot which one of your songs or which one of your lessons you talk about. It's really important, though, is that the absolutes that we say. I will always be sad. I will never see you again. This is for eternity. I was talking with someone just the other day, and they said, for eternity, for the rest of my life, I will never see her again. And I'm like, you just said two opposing things there. The rest of your life is not eternity, but that's the way we feel when we're going through grief.
Right. Love is forever.
Right.
That's the part. The suffering. I mean, one of the things I often dealt with is, do I feel guilty to tell someone that I've healed? What does that mean? I mean, healing represents a scar. I mean, I call it the amputation of my soul, the part that people can't see that you've lost something. There's no sympathy for that. You carry it. And then the whole idea of healing is, I'm not letting go of love. I'm letting go of the suffering. And my son, he doesn't want me to suffer. I mean, that's a truism where you say, oh, the person you're grieving doesn't want you to suffer. Well, that doesn't take away the pain when you're in it. But I wrote the story of healing, and it was an image. I was in a prison of grief. And that was actually a term another bereaved person told me. She says, I'm in a prison of grief and there's no escape.
Yes.
And you're angry. Like, what did I do to be in this prison? What is my crime that I am imprisoned? And there's just like no way out. And then one day I was able to leave that prison, and I kept going back because I wanted the other prisoners to know they could leave too. But I kept wondering, how in the world did I leave the prison? And then I saw this image. It was my son, and his face was like a light, and he handed me the key. He wanted me to leave. He did not want me to live in a prison. He was giving me the key. And that I wrote a song about.
And I love what you said there. And because it's interesting, because as I'm listening to the chorus, I hear sometimes you say grief, I'm over my grief, or my grief is ended, or grief ends. And then other times you talk about how we are always in grief. And we talked about this before we got started. And I think it's both. That, as you said just so eloquently right there, the suffering can end, that continual terrible feeling, but we still miss them. And I think you use this analogy in one of your songs or in one of the lessons, and it's one I learned a long time ago, that when our loved one is ripped away from us, there's like a hole in our heart, and it's raw and it's painful. and that hole eventually scars over and it leaves scars. There's still a hole, but I think you said that hole's filled with love. Was that was in one of your lessons, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Love is the key. I mean,
yeah.
It was love that got me surviving because I still loved my other children. I loved my parents. I felt that that was the only reason to go on because there was no other point.
Yeah.
But I also had a concept from Angel in the Sky, which of course was very important, that I still cry. It's okay to cry. I still cry about my son. Does that mean that I'm still in deep grief? No. It's acknowledging the feelings. And the healing is the part where I used to anticipate the day of his death and his birthday. I mean, a birthday is even sadder than a death day. Because, or passing transition day, the birthday represents the fact that he will never grow up. He'll never get married, have children. I mean, all the things that you wish for your child that will not happen. But now his birthday can come and I feel peaceful. And I remember him and I sing songs for him. And in Angel in the Sky, I came up with this concept, angel here on earth. He's in the sky, I'm on earth. And by honoring his legacy, he lives on. His name is mentioned. He becomes alive to me. And it also means by helping other people, it's a beautiful way to keep his memory alive.
Absolutely. And I think that's the balance that we talked about earlier. We don't want to bypass, this life and to say, okay, I'm just going to wait till I die and then I'll see him again. Right. He's still here with me. I can still honor him while I'm here. And our loved ones, whether that have transitioned, whether it's a parent or a child or, a spouse or whatever it is, they don't want us to be miserable. And sometimes we hold on to that misery because we think the pain we confuse it with the love. And if we let go of the pain, then we're letting go of the love.
Exactly.
So what I'd like to do is, let's talk about the course, because I want to explain to people what it is, and in case we haven't explained it very well. So it's 10 lessons, and each lesson is a song that Judy has written, and she actually cites the lyrics. She recites the lyrics, and then you talk about the meaning of them for you.
Right.
So let's go through just real quickly, maybe a couple of minutes or 30 seconds or a minute on each song, on each lesson.
Sure.
So the first one is So Real.
Yeah, the first line is, this morning I woke up and it slipped my mind that you're not here with me anymore. And it's about that shock where you wake up and you have this peaceful feeling like you still remember you can call them, and then all of a sudden it hits you like a shock to your heart. And again, the beauty of the healing for me is I look forward now to waking up in the morning, but for so many years, that was the worst part. I did not want to wake up. I didn't want to wake up to face this. Yeah. That's what the song is about.
And every season.
Well, I talked about how when he died, the weather became cold. He died at the beginning of autumn. So every year when the season would change, the dead leaves were like his body crumpling into a pile of dust. It was just triggering the memories. But then the memories of summer, his last summer on earth, and spring. It was like each seasonal change was so sad. And it was my first song that I wrote as an adult woman, because I didn't know I could write songs again. Yeah. And there I was playing my guitar again, and this song came to me. I could write a new song, and the lyrics were sad. It was, when you left from life, I withdrew, and a piece of my soul died too. Life and death are a mystery, and my sadness will always be. Every season you come back to me. And, I thought I'd change it to, and my love will always be. And I tried to sing that. It didn't feel authentic. No. So I left it. I left it because it's a testimony to how I felt before I healed.
I think it's important. I think that's important, because what I love about, as I've gone through this, I can remember being in each one of these stages, and it makes you feel less alone when you hear someone else singing your emotions. So I'm glad you left it the way it is.
Thank you.
Beside me always.
Well, I feel like that one I've covered. I mean, with the switch in the chorus. But the main thing was, it's so cool that I could write a book about this story, and it's on Amazon, and it's also an audiobook, which is very close to my heart, because I have some recordings on there of Jason's voice, him and I conversing, and Yeah. So that song actually is what brought me to Insight Timer. There we go.
And you have recording of his voice in one of the songs and one of the lessons, which was, I love that.
But when I did the book, I'll just say real quick, when I did the book, I had someone promoting it and she says, do a meditation album to go with the book. So I'd never done meditation album. So I did a meditation album. That's how Insight Timer found me. So it's just part of the story.
Yeah. Hang On.
Hanging on was just about all the ways that I found to hang on. And I even say at the end, when I was grieving, I did all these things until the day arrived when I realized it had become easier to hang on. The sun started shining again and life became bearable. If you find yourself slipping, there are hands to hold you if you look for them. You are worth it. Don't forget your loved one is holding you too.
Yeah.
I didn't realize when I was hanging on, I thought it was the loneliest journey ever. It wasn't until later that I realized that he carried me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Set You Free.
Well, that was actually about letting go of my father. He was very sick when I wrote it, and it was, I need to set you free. I hadn't done it yet. It doesn't express that I've done it. It's like the struggle. And the words that brought me tears were your smile, your touch, your voice, your face, your essence, I will never replace. And that makes me cry because that's the part we feel that we're going to lose. We're going to forget how they smelled, how they sounded. And it does get harder. And you don't want to let go of that. And at the same time, the pain is so great. But then when my parents both died, I sang that song to them as they were dying. And my mother, I finished the song and I said, I need to set you free. And her last breath, it was like so eerie. That song helped to set me free.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, when I heard you saying the lyrics and I saw the lesson title, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this one, but I love how you tied it into your parents and setting that physical existence, go free. Because for me, I'll never let Shayna go free. So that's just my little thing there.
I love the word essence. That's the part. The essence.
Yeah.
They are there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not forever.
Well, I remember going to a grief site where I had, this lesson was one word for grief. And I mean, I have the list here: agony, anguish, eternal, lonely, forever, excruciating. It went on and on. But what was the most repeated word? Forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, this is the song I'm going to write. And it was really, you say your pain will always be there. And every day is a nightmare. I remember so well living with that kind of hell. So that song was a change because hang on, I was so excited about healing from grief. I wanted to tell everyone, you can do it. Mm-hmm. And I was a cheerleader. And I thought, that's not compassionate enough for me because I didn't like it when people did that to me in the early stage of grief. I'm going to write a different song. I remember so well I was more like, I know what you're going through. And then the whole thing, it's not forever. It feels like it's never going to change. So that's why that's why I birthed the song.
Yeah, that's the thing that breaks my heart more than anything when I'm talking to someone, when I hear that forever. It's forever. I will never see them again. It's always going to be this way. I will always feel this way. And you're right. The hang on thing is okay, but it's like, but there's hope but it's going to be for a little while. There's work to be done.
The funniest part though is the songs I'm writing for others are for me.
Right. I
was going through a really terrible divorce and I kept listening to Hang On, and that got me through it, my own song. It was like I was talking to myself.
Yeah. Somewhere I Can't See.
That was anticipatory. I was losing my mother now, and I decided, you know what? I hold on to the love that heals me. You're not gone. You're just somewhere I can't see. I won't drown in misery because your love rescues me. That's the chorus. And it was just a way to tell myself I can get through this grief because I know they're there and I just can't see them, and their love is going to save me. Okay.
And Clear?
That was about finding clarity. And the biggest line in the song for me was the ending line. It's never too late to turn your life around. No reason to wait. And the irony was I was waiting. I was terrified. I decided to end my marriage and I didn't know how to do it. It was horrible. And the whole thing about Clear was it was like beautiful music I could hear. I opened my eyes. Life became clear. The music was my clarity because I'm writing these lyrics that are like a script. It was bizarre. It was like my own song is telling me, hang on, and it's not forever. It was like, I better listen to my lyrics. So when I wrote that, it's never too late to turn your life around. And I was waiting. I thought, I guess I better stop waiting and live. So, thank God for my songs, because I did write a song, Music Saved Me. Is that not true? Because if it hadn't appeared, I might be in the same situation, the zombie land.
Yeah. My Shining Star.
I love that one, especially. It's your breath I feel, you whisper in my ear to heal. That was about being alone and sad, and he's there, in my heart, you will stay. I'll hold on to our love forever. Every night, the stars above, remind me of your love. It was just a song that celebrated, like, he's my shining star. He's what I look to get through every hard time.
Awesome. And finally, The Key.
That was the story I told about my prison of grief and the revelation. It didn't come till the very end of the song. It says, you came back to bring me the key. So here's the switch. In every season, I said, and my sadness will always be every season you come back to me. So I did have a picture that he's coming back to me every season, but a sad, sad picture. But the key is the evolution of healing, because now it's, you came back to bring me the key that allowed me to leave the prison. He did come back. Yeah. What a beautiful ending,
Yeah, I love the arc. It's interesting because I can see the arc in the songs, but also there's hope within each song too. So there's, they start off sad and you can see more hope in each one, but there's always some hope in it. And I love the way that you've laid it out. I was talking to you beforehand. You don't include the actual songs in the lessons, and I'll let you explain why.
Well, that's because the lesson is just kept to about 15 to 20 minutes. I figure if people want to hear the song, it's available. So they can look for the vocal medley. I also have all of my course and all those songs and music on Bandcamp. Right. But on Insight Timer, it's free, and the course is free. So that's the best way to access the music. I mean, I have 3 songs that I love. Beside Me Always, Angel in the Sky, and My Shining Star, that are just complete meditation versions that are about 20 minutes. And then I have them as a medley called Heavenly Healing Meditation Songs. I find that very spiritual.
Awesome. Well, I want to tell people, so if you get Insight Timer, it's a free app. You can download it to your iPhone or Android. There's also the Insight Timer website, and I'll put a link to the course in the show notes.
Sure.
But the course is called Healing Grief Through Music. So if you get Insight Timer, look for that. It's by Judy Unger. Judy, if you want to find out more about her, go to judyungermusic.com. It's Judy, and it's UNGER music.com. And there'll be links to all the course. And you have a free course in Insight Timer, which is the one that I've taken. And you also have a paid course if you've got the premium version of Insight Timer with more. And the other thing is the music the songs that you use in the course are also available through Insight Timer for free. So look through the songs for the songs.
They're also on, some of them are on iTunes. I mean, I have on my blog all my recordings for free as well on the Judy Unger Music under Song Stories. It's interesting because I've written 52 songs. Somebody said to me, you have a full deck. Actually, I have one for every week of the year. But there you go. I have enough songs to start another course. So the one that's a paid course is called Songs of Healing and Hope. And they're not all grief songs. They're songs about communication. I ended my marriage and all these songs about finding clarity. But I'm starting to write another course. I don't know what I'm going to name it, but I just go song by song, my Bible. It's like each song has taught me something.
Yeah.
I like what you said about growth. I call my songs song seeds, and I call my songs my song garden. Those seeds were planted when I was young, and now I get to grow them. And you were talking about grief on your site, about you're buried. But who knows when you're buried what growth is going to come from that. And that reminds me of the butterfly. The grief is your darkness. You're in a cocoon, and one day you will emerge.
And that's a great point. And, it's funny. I was just talking with someone the other day about the whole idea about being in a cocoon. There's a couple of things, when the caterpillar goes in the cocoon, it takes patience. It takes a while for that caterpillar to come out. So don't rush your grief process. And Judy, it's great that you, after 18 years, said, okay, now I'm going to start really processing my grief. But it takes us all a while. The other thing about a caterpillar, we love that analogy. It's a beautiful analogy, caterpillar to a butterfly. But when the caterpillar crawls into the cocoon, what a lot of people don't realize, it actually releases its digestive enzyme, and it becomes soup, basically. It digests itself. So at some point in that process, it's just a liquid mess. And that's what we feel like when we're going through grief. But we've got all the components we need to rebuild ourselves and rebuild ourselves into something better. So when people say, am I ever going to be the same after my grief? I say, I hope not, because otherwise you've wasted all this pain. You've got to take this and make something out of it.
No, that is so true. That is so true. Yeah, I think about the fact that people probably thought I had healed after 10 years. I mean, of course, I was coping, surviving. And this is the thing. I went from being a survivor of grief to healed. And what was the difference? Healing represents joy. That when I found joy through my music, that's when I discovered healing. I didn't know about it, and I had no idea that would ever happen. I did not believe I would ever, of course, yes, there's laughter and this and that, but the joy of looking forward to waking up in the morning. And I think my appreciation for my life is so great because I suffered so much. I'm so grateful that I don't wake up with that pain, that I can look forward to every day, that there is such joy with my songs. And people will say, oh, your music is so sad. But when my music makes me cry, that's what heals me. It releases those tears. I want it to make me cry. It has to be so beautiful that it burrows into my heart and extracts those words that help to heal me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I remember after Shayna passed away and I was, listening to music every day and I would take my walks and I was thinking, why do I like to listen to sad music? When I just the other day I put on a song, I was like, I know this song is going to make me cry. Right. But there are times when you just need that. You need that release. And then the music kind of takes those emotions that are tied up inside of you and brings them out.
Exactly. I didn't have music. I didn't listen to music for all those years I was grieving. I call it, I was screaming in silence in my head. And I had that opera replaying his death over and over.
Yeah. What a difference. I want to thank you for putting your course out there and for making it available to all of us. And I've already recommended it to people. I'm doing this podcast. I'm recommending it to everybody that's listening. If you've gone through any kind of a grief situation, to get Inside Timer, get the course, go to Judy's website and take advantage of it. I appreciate you putting it out there.
Yeah. And I think also what's very cool now on Inside Timer are the live sessions. And I've started doing them because it's an opportunity for me to actually have a live session where I'm not reading a script I've written. I worked really hard to write these lessons. Now I'm like, this is why I had good practice for this today. I get to talk about the song and I play my guitar. I actually sing the song. So then I can play beside me always and I can sing to my son. It takes courage because I don't think I'm, this super singer, but this is exactly what I want to be doing. I'm living my dream.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Judy, for being here and have a great rest of your day.
I love looking at Shayna. I want you to tell you, it's like there's this light to the side of her face and it sort of parallels you and it's lighting your face. And I can feel like she's right here with us.
Oh, yeah, she is. She is.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And to anybody listening, I just say, never give up hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And now here's a passage from Beside Me Always by Judy Unger.
When I say the opera began, I am describing my tortured thought process during bereavement. It took at least 10 years before the opera of Jason's death stopped. I would describe the opera as those last moments before the curtain dropped and I touched my dead child. Those events played out in a looping format for me every day for years. I relived the last moments of my son's life over and over again. It was truly the only way that something as unbelievable as his death could eventually be accepted. After Jason had his heart surgery, I went home because he was alive and I could collapse. I told my husband he would be there and I would stay with our younger son. I came home, passed out on the bed with my baby, my 2-year-old, in the darkness. Suddenly, I woke up. An icy wave of dread came over me that sent chills throughout my body. I had a pit in my stomach that was deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. In terror, I willed myself to stay calm. My fear only increased with the jarring sound of the telephone. The voice on the other end said I needed to come to the hospital right away. She said my son was not doing very well. I found out later Jason had already died when that call was made. I experienced the worst panic attack of my life. I could not stop shaking. My heart pounded loudly. I could not hear or think. Where the hell were my shoes, my robe, my glasses, my keys? I woke up my younger son and he shrieked as I brought him to his babysitter. The drive to the hospital was the longest drive of my life. I thought I would have my head explode. My heart was pounding and pounding. I ran through hallways. I couldn't remember where the pediatric intensive care unit was. Suddenly, I saw my husband at the end of the hallway. He was running towards me, crying loudly. He sobbed, "He's gone." I started screaming. We were all screaming and crying so loudly because the unthinkable had happened. There was no way for me to have prepared myself for this. My husband was always shy and discreet. I had never seen him cry before. Our sobs and wails went on and on. The surgeon came to see us. She was crying too. I dismissed her. Go away, I decided. I didn't have to listen to any more medical jargon about cardiac abnormalities ever again. We were told we had to wait. They needed to fix our child up in order for us to see him. It was soon time for me to go in and face seeing death. My son would be the first dead person I had ever seen in my life. I could not see his freckles because his face was frosty white. The most shocking part was his blackened lips. His eyes were open, unforgettable, lifeless, and empty. I will never forget those eyes for the rest of my life. Only the night before, those same eyes were intelligent, sparkling with joy and laughter. There was no question he was gone, and this was only a corpse. He felt so cold. I held on to him as long as I could. I cried and cried. And so the bereavement period of my life began. An opera played in my mind over and over. It had no melody or music. It was endless, and it went on and on for me while life continued for everyone and everyone else around me. I collapsed in shock. What about my continued existence? I wanted to be with my son. I wanted to be dead. Where had he gone? He needed me so much. How could it be possible that he didn't need me anymore? It didn't seem possible. I went to those places over and over again. He's cold. He's hungry. He's scared. He's alone. He needs me. The truth was that I needed him. I had been his caregiver, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I went home and into his bedroom and covered my head with his pillow, the one that still had his odor on it. I cried enough tears to fill an ocean. Why was I still alive? This was too much pain to possibly live with. Books have been written about the stages of grief. I have lived all of those stages. The numbness was bizarre. There was no sense of time. Eating, sleeping, living seemed outside the realm of what it once was. There was no purpose for anything anymore. There was no way to control the endless parade of intensely painful, repetitive thoughts. I looked at the sky. Could he be there? I looked at a bird, at a butterfly. Could he be visiting me? I strained to hear his voice again. Was he calling for his mommy? There was no color in the world anywhere. There was nothing but shades of gray. Within a day, the weather became cold. I felt the season changed on the very day he died, on October 6th. Life continued for everyone and everything else around me. It did not seem possible that it could get any worse. It did not seem possible that it could get any better. It was what it was, empty, sad, excruciating, endless. When I finally connected with other bereaved parents, we all agreed about such things as it was much harder at 6 months than the day it happened. 6 months marked the absolute lowest moment. At 6 months, the support was gone. Everyone expected me to get on with my life. It was time to just get over it. At 6 months, the shock was just starting to wear off, and the painful reality was only just beginning. The first year was extremely painful. Every event was a first. The first Mother's Day, the first birthday. It was horrible. My child wasn't there to celebrate it. And then the second year was worse than the first year. I believed I'd survived the first year, but it wasn't getting any easier. It was discouraging. It felt like life as I knew it was not worth living anymore. There was truly no hope of getting better. I met another bereaved mother once, and she said to me, "It took me about 7 years. In 7 years, the agony will subside and you will definitely start feeling a little better." Well, she was right about that. In those agonizing years, I raised my other children. I had to get used to the idea of not taking care of Jason anymore. I had done it so well for 5 years. I didn't know how to stop suddenly. I was always proud of my survival, and I considered it my greatest achievement. But as the years passed, I felt like I was wounded and damaged. I seldom mentioned my grief. And I just learned that being angry isolated me and led to further loneliness. One day, I decided surviving wasn't enough for me anymore. I expressed my honest feelings through writing and music, and I unburdened my soul. I never realized how much energy was required to hold everything in. I believed I was incapable of happiness after suffering the loss of what I had so deeply loved. I thought the best times in life were behind me, but I'm so grateful because I don't feel that way anymore.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I want to make it really easy for you to reach me. So just send me a text to 31996 and simply text the word growth, GROWTH. In fact, you can right now just say, "Hey Siri," send a message to 31996. And when Siri asks you what you want to send, just say growth. You can do the same thing with OK Google. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to Grief to Growth. Brian hopes that you find this episode helpful and will come back for future episodes. Brian's best-selling book, Grief to Growth, Planted Not Buried, is a great resource for anyone who is coping with grief or knows someone who is. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to support it, there are 3 things you can do to help. The first is to share the podcast with someone that you think it will help. The second is to go to iTunes, rate, and review the episode. The third way you can support the podcast is by becoming a patron. Head over to www.patreon.com/grief2growth. That's patreon.com/grief, the number 2, growth, and sign up to make a small monthly donation. Patrons get access to exclusive bonus content and knowledge that you are helping to spread the message of grief to growth. For more about Brian and Grief to Growth, visit www.grief2growth.com.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grieftogrowth.circle.so. That's grief, the number 2, growth.circle.so to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.